My name is John Everly, 58 years old, and I spent the better half of my adult life inside the same glass-paneled office building in downtown Portland. 32 years, to be exact. I wasn't the kind of guy who made waves. I showed up on time. I mentored the rookies. I met every deadline, stayed late when needed, and even brought coffee for the whole floor on Fridays. Architecture wasn't just a career for me. It was my craft, my legacy, and that company. That company was supposed to be my home. At least that's what I thought. Until the Tuesday morning, I was summoned to the 14th floor conference room. The message had come from Claire, the new operations director. She was 32, fresh out of a tech startup, always glued to her iPad and obsessed with disruption and optimization. She'd never actually designed a single building in her life, but somehow she held the authority to restructure legacy teams, which apparently included me. The meeting room was ice cold. Claire sat across the long table flanked by HR and some guy I'd never seen before in a navy suit. No eye contact, no small talk, just a folder with my name on it and a flat sentence. John, after much review, we've decided to transition you out of your role, effective immediately. We believe this will open up space for fresh leadership aligned with our evolving direction. I blinked. Transition me out, I asked calmly. For what reason? Claire didn't even flinch. John, this is not about performance. It's just, we need younger, faster-moving energy. You've had a good run. A good run. As if 3 decades of building this firm from a skeleton crew to a high-rise empire was just a phase. Like I was some aging laptop they needed to replace for something sleeker. I looked down at the cardboard box on the table, already packed. My nameplate, my notepad, even the mug that said World's Best Draftsman. They had planned this, and not once did they bother to ask what I thought. I could feel the heat rising behind my ears, but I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I simply stood up, and I smiled. Well then, I said calmly, I hope your new energy knows how to keep the lights on. They didn't get it, but they would, soon. I walked out of that building with 32 years of my life in a bow and the weight of betrayal on my shoulders. I wasn't just fired, I was dismissed. Written off, declared obsolete, but what they didn't know, what they never once thought to consider, was that I wasn't just another name on the payroll. I was the man who designed the very building they worked in. Every beam, every vent, every square inch of that glass tower bore my fingerprints. I was there when the foundation was poured. I was there when the lease was signed. And over the years, I had been quietly, patiently preparing for something they never imagined. You see, while my coworkers were chasing promotions and company awards, I was investing. Quietly, consistently. Every bonus, every tax return, every freelance gig, I funneled it into a portfolio of commercial real estate properties through a holding company I named Stonewell Partners. Most of them thought I lived modestly because I wasn't ambitious. They didn't know I was building something bigger, something of my own. And 3 months before Claire pushed that folder across the table, I made a decision. I bought the deed to the building they were renting through Stonewell Partners, quietly, legally, perfectly timed. They never saw it coming, but I did. Because while they were focused on making me irrelevant, I was becoming unforgettable. That day in the conference room, that wasn't the end of my career. It was the beginning of my revenge. You want to know how I got there, how a man with nothing but a box of his belongings and a bruised ego walked away from a 32-year career and ended up owning the building that kicked him out. It didn't happen overnight. It happened one brick at a time. Let me take you back to 1991. I was 24, just fresh out of Oregon State with a degree in architecture and an unhealthy obsession with Frank Lloyd Wright. Most of my friends moved to Seattle or LA, chasing modern design gigs in digital firms. Me, I stayed in Portland. I liked the pace. I liked the quiet. And I liked the fact that people still built things here with their hands. I landed an entry-level draftsman job at a small firm, 6 employees, 1 copier, and the office coffee was basically mud. But the owner, Harold Blake, was old school. He saw something in me, said I had eyes like a builder and a soul like an artist. He mentored me, taught me that architecture wasn't just about straight lines and right angles. It was about purpose, about imagining how people live, walk, think, feel inside the space you create. I soaked it all in, and I worked my ass off. Nights, weekends, holidays. I became the guy everyone called when blueprints needed cleaning up or when a contractor had a question at 7 a.m. on a Saturday. I wasn't chasing a title. I was chasing mastery. Fast forward 10 years. The firm grew. We went from 6 to 60 employees, from strip mall storefronts to high-rise office towers. One of those towers, the one on Belmont and 10th, was my design. I still remember standing across the street watching the final pane of glass slide into place, heart pounding. That building was mine in every way that mattered, even if my name didn't end up on the outside. But it never bothered me, because I had a plan. You see, sometime around 2005, I started noticing a pattern. Good men, smart men were getting let go in their late 50s. Restructuring, they called it. Future-focused rebranding. But we all knew what it really was. Ageism with a fresh coat of paint. I didn't wait around for it to happen to me. Instead, I started playing a longer game. I set up a holding company, Stonewell Partners, a shell, with no link to my personal name, operated quietly through a lawyer and a CPA I trusted. Then I started investing. Nothing fancy, just small properties, at first duplexes, a laundromat, a couple of auto shops near the edge of town. I fixed them up myself, rented them out, rolled the income into more property. While others in the firm bought new SUVs and second homes in Bend, I drove my 2004 Tacoma and drank drip coffee. They thought I was stuck in the past. But the truth was, I was already building my future. In 2017, something strange happened. The firm I helped build was bought out. A corporate acquisition. Suddenly, we weren't Blake & Associates anymore. We were Nexa Creative. Bright colors, open seating, standing desks, and buzzwords like synergy and innovative alignment. They started bringing in new management people from outside the industry, tech people, marketing people, HR consultants who treated the drafting room like it was a social experiment. The work changed, the culture changed, and slowly the faces did too. One by one, the old guard disappeared, downsized, moved on, pushed out. I knew my time was coming, so I made a move. In 2019, the owners of the Belmont Tower, yes, the very building I designed, listed it for sale. They were retiring and wanted out of real estate. The firm had been leasing it for nearly 15 years. They assumed one of the larger developers in the area would buy it. But I had other plans. Stonewell Partners made a silent offer above asking, all cash. No negotiations, no contingencies. They accepted in under 48 hours. Just like that. I became the landlord of the people who were preparing to fire me. I never told anyone, never so much as hinted. I kept working, kept smiling, kept showing up with coffee on Fridays, because the best revenge is silent. And that's the part they'll never understand. The Claires of the world, the fresh energy crowd, they think power is about who talks loudest, who's trending, who can pitch on a Zoom call with the most buzzwords per minute. But real power is leverage. It's patience. It's owning the ground they're standing on, while they mock the man who built it. So when they finally called me into that room, when they slid that box across the table like a prize for loyalty, they had no idea they were setting themselves up for the cleanest power move I've ever made. I didn't fight. I didn't argue. I just smiled, because I already had the deed in my briefcase. And that was the sweetest damn feeling in the world. It was a Tuesday when everything changed. Not just any Tuesday, the kind that starts like every other, but ends with you walking into a new chapter of your life. And for me, that day started with a black coffee, a crisp autumn breeze, and the contract that would make me the new owner of the building my former employers thought they ruled. Let me rewind a little. After I got fired for being too old, I was angry but not broken. Disappointed, but not defeated. I had savings contacts and, most importantly, time. Time to plan, time to dig, time to find out how I could turn this moment into the greatest comeback of my life. And I did. I learned that the company that fired me, Braytech Solutions, didn't own the building. They were leasing it from a private equity firm that was in the middle of restructuring their portfolio, quietly, discreetly, looking to offload assets to reduce exposure. And guess which property was at the top of their dump list? That same worn-down 4-story brick and glass office complex in downtown Cleveland that housed my old office. The irony was delicious. Now here's the thing, I wasn't swimming in millions. I couldn't just stroll in and write a check. But what I did have was a clean credit record, a good amount of retirement funds, and a strong business plan. I pitched a deal through a holding company I created. Nobody knew my name. Nobody knew my connection to Braytech. I was just another investor looking to acquire commercial real estate. 3 weeks of negotiation, background checks, and legal paperwork. Later it was done. I became the new landlord. The contract was signed in a quiet office with little fanfare. I shook hands with a broker who had no idea I once sat in a corner office on the 3rd floor of the building he just helped me buy. I thanked him, walked out, and stood across the street, staring at the building like it was an old friend I hadn't seen in years. Then I smiled, but I didn't barge in right away. That's not how you play a long game. First, I reviewed all the lease terms. Turns out Braytech was on a month-to-month lease after failing to renew the long-term agreement they'd had for years. They were technically on borrowed time, and the best part, I wasn't bound to renew it. I could legally give them 30 days notice and they'd be forced to leave, but eviction wasn't my goal. Oh no, my goal was to make a point. So I waited 1 week. Then I scheduled a meeting. I walked into that same building I'd once walked out of with a cardboard box full of my belongings and a pit in my stomach. Only this time I walked in wearing a tailored navy suit, holding a briefcase with the property ownership documents neatly tucked inside. Reception didn't recognize me. They buzzed me through to the executive floor. Their new VP of operations, a smug guy named Mitchell, greeted me at the conference room. "Nice to meet you. You're the new property liaison," he asked casually. I smiled, something like that. We sat. I handed over a copy of the updated lease terms. More expensive, much stricter, including new penalties for late payments, restricted parking privileges, and a 60-day clause for building-wide renovation notices. Mitchell raised an eyebrow. "Bit steep, isn't it?" "Welcome to the market," I said calmly. "You can choose to sign it or vacate. Your current lease expires in 2 weeks." He leaned back, clearly annoyed. "We've been tenants for 12 years. I looked him straight in the eye. "I know." He blinked. "Wait a second. I know you. You used to work here." "Frank." "Right, bingo." I let that sit for a moment, watched the color drain from his face. "You bought the building, I did. But why?" "Let's just say I needed an office again." He fumbled with the papers. This is retaliation." "It's business," I replied, standing. "Exactly the kind of business mindset you all admired. Remember, I left the meeting without another word. That afternoon, I went to the 3rd floor. My old office. Same window, same view. It was now occupied by a junior executive. I didn't bother speaking to him. I simply stood at the glass and looked out over the street like I used to, except this time I wasn't looking up at the building, wondering how I'd ever get back inside. I was inside, and I owned the place. Within days, word spread like wildfire. Braytech employees whispered in elevators, speculated over lunch. The man they fired for being outdated was now the one who could shut them down with a notice. Some staff approached me, former coworkers, friends. They congratulated me nervously. Some even asked if I was hiring. I wasn't. Not yet. First, I needed to clean house. Mitchell emailed me a counteroffer. I declined. He scheduled another meeting. I showed up with a lawyer. They caved. Braytech signed the new lease. They had no other option. Moving would cost them double, and they couldn't afford the disruption, not with the product launch they had coming up. Oh, did I mention that part? I found out through the building manager that Braytech's new software launch, a project I once helped start, was happening in 6 weeks. That meant they'd need uninterrupted server access, stable infrastructure, and zero downtime. Guess who now controlled all the building's maintenance schedules? Exactly. I didn't sabotage them. That would have been petty. Instead, I did exactly what any smart property owner would do. I announced a full systems inspection the week before their launch. Legally required. Perfectly timed. They scrambled. Mitchell begged me to postpone. I agreed on the condition that they pay 3 months' rent in advance. They did. And so it went for the next several months. Braytech operated under my roof, writing checks with my name at the bottom. Every time they cut a rent check, I smiled a little more. I wasn't just their former employee anymore. I was their landlord. And every day they walked into that building, they walked on floors I paid for under lights I authorized in a space I controlled. Now tell me that's not the best revenge. But here's the truth. Revenge was never the end game. Ownership was. Power was. Dignity was. Being fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. It pushed me to take control of my future instead of letting someone else write the rules. And when the time came, I didn't just bounce back. I bought the damn court. That's not a comeback. That's a takeover. And I was just getting started. There's a strange kind of silence that comes with power. Not the noisy kind that people flaunt with titles or loud voices, but the kind that sits in your chest like a loaded revolver in a locked drawer. Quiet, heavy, controlled. The first Monday after the purchase, I arrived at the building early. Not because I needed to, I had property management taking care of most day-to-day operations, but because I wanted to sit in the parking lot with my coffee and watch them arrive. The very people who once joked that I was too old that I slowed down the team. The same people who had no idea they now worked in a building I owned. When Carla pulled in, I had to suppress a smirk. She was the one who led the charge against me, pushed the narrative that I was outdated, that I didn't adapt, that my time had passed. She strutted across the lot like she always did, heels clicking, coffee in hand, sunglasses on at 7:30 a.m., like she was starring in her own HBO drama. Then came Mark, the fresh-faced manager they brought in to replace me. He was maybe 30, full of buzzwords and LinkedIn swagger. I once overheard him refer to me as legacy baggage. That one stuck. And now they were walking into a building I bought with the severance they gave me. That's irony you can't script. I didn't tell them right away. What would be the point? Real power isn't about rubbing people's faces in it. It's about positioning, about choosing when to speak, and when to let others figure it out the hard way. But change was coming, and they'd feel it soon. The first memo. It started with a letter formally delivered from the property management company to all commercial tenants of 1248 Eastwood Drive. Please be advised that as of this month, new ownership has taken effect. While your lease terms remain unchanged, a few operational updates will be implemented over the coming quarter. Sincerely, Marcus Bennett, owner, MB Holdings. I knew they'd Google the name. I wanted them to sit in their morning meeting, sipping corporate brewed coffee, reading my name and wondering, could it be? Later that afternoon, I got a text from an old colleague, still at the company. Dude, did you seriously buy the building? Carla looks like she's seen a ghost. I didn't respond. Some things are better left confirmed by silence. Small changes, big ripples. In the weeks that followed, I made small tweaks that only a former employee would think to make. Subtle reminders that this place, my place, wasn't the same anymore. The broken elevator panel that had been ignored for months, fixed within 48 hours. The old stained carpet on the third floor that HR had said wasn't in budget to replaced premium fiber, no corners cut. That one employee break room they always locked for executive use, I ordered it open to everyone. Stocked with decent coffee, healthy snacks, and a brand new espresso machine. No nameplates, no walls. Let them guess why. Then came the kicker: security upgrades. Every tenant had to reissue badges. Nothing dramatic, just updated system, new cards, all signed under my name, printed on each property of MB Holdings. You could feel the tension in the hallways. Whispers, glances. Nobody wanted to say it out loud, but they were starting to put the pieces together. And then Carla emailed me directly. The email's subject: clarification request, ownership status. Dear Mr. Bennett, I hope this message finds you well. Our team recently received communication regarding new ownership of 1248 Eastwood Drive. There has been some speculation, and I was hoping to confirm whether you are, in fact, the Marcus Bennett referenced as the new owner. If so, I would appreciate a conversation about upcoming building improvements and long-term plans. Regards, Carla Jennings, Regional Director, Stratix Systems. Oh, Carla. The same Carla who once told HR I was resistant to innovation, the one who refused to approve my project extension saying we need someone with fresh energy. I waited 3 days before replying. Then I sent a single sentence: yes, that's me. I'd be happy to meet schedule with my office. No smiley face, no warmth, just facts. The meeting. We met in one of the newly renovated conference rooms. She arrived in a sharp navy blazer, clipboard in hand, all business. I sat at the head of the table. For a moment, she faltered eyes, scanning the room like it was unfamiliar territory. Because it was. The ground had shifted and she could feel it. I just want to say, she began, adjusting her glasses, this is unexpected, but congratulations. Thank you, I said simply. It's been a busy few years. She tried to mask her discomfort, but it leaked through. We talked shop lease terms, HVAC upgrades, fiber internet upgrades I plan to install. She nodded, feigned enthusiasm, tried to make small talk about returning talent to real estate. But then she said something that made me pause. "You know, Marcus, if things had played out differently, you'd probably still be in your old office upstairs running strategy." I leaned forward. "No," I said. "If things had played out differently, I'd still be working under people who didn't see my worth. I'm good where I am." She gave a tight smile. I gave her nothing else. Redemption without revenge. I didn't evict them. I didn't jack up the rent. That would have been petty, and honestly, I didn't need to. They knew. Every time they walked past the lobby plaque, every time they swiped their access badge, every time they received a maintenance update, they knew whose name was on the paperwork. And that was enough. I didn't need revenge. I had position. I didn't need payback. I had ownership. I didn't need validation. I had peace. The world has a funny way of spinning back around. The same people who underestimated me now operated in a space I controlled, not to lord over them, but to remind myself resilience is quieter than rage, but 10 times more powerful. They fired me for being too old. Now I owned the building they rent. And that was the best boardroom mic drop I could have ever planned. There's something poetic about walking the same halls that once witnessed your humiliation, but now with every step echoing authority. I didn't strut. I didn't gloat, but I walked with presence. Because every creak of the hardwood, every badge scan at the lobby turnstile, every little flicker of recognition in their eyes told me one thing they knew. They knew the game had changed, and I was holding the board now. Reclaiming the space 1 week after Carla and I met, I began a series of strategic upgrades to the building. Not because it was falling apart, but because it was mine. And I wanted to leave my mark, not just physically, but philosophically. First, I installed an art piece in the lobby, a sculpture of a phoenix forged from industrial scrap metal, bold metallic rising from fire. Beneath it was a plaque. "Every setback is a setup. Rise wisely." I didn't need to sign my name. They knew. Next came the rebranding of the conference rooms. Each one was renamed after historical figures who reinvented themselves. Lincoln, Oprah, Edison, Mandela Jobs. The irony, the room where I was once let go was now called the Phoenix Room. When Braytec's staff realized the symbolism, they started calling the building the Comeback Tower, not publicly, of course, but in whispers, jokes over coffee, nervous laughter, half admiration, half fear. And that's when I knew revenge wasn't about shouting. It was about rewriting the narrative so deeply that even your enemies have to acknowledge the plot twist. The new tenants. As part of my repositioning strategy, I opened up space for new tenants on the top floor. Braytec assumed they'd eventually expand into it. They were wrong. Instead, I leased it to a startup run by a 27-year-old prodigy named Devonte Sharp, respectful, ambitious. Reminded me of myself in my early 30s. I mentored him, quietly dropped by for coffee, gave him tips on team dynamics, scaling, and brand strategy. Devonte's company, a direct competitor to Braytec's newest product line. Poetic right. Even better, Devonte didn't need a floor full of space, so I invited a local nonprofit into the corner wing rent-free. They helped underserved kids learn coding and design thinking. I hosted a ribbon-cutting event. Media showed up, local officials, tech reporters. Braytec wasn't even invited. That stung. The email from Mark. Then one night, I got an email from Mark. You remember him, the slick new guy who took over my role with too much ego and too little experience. Subject catching up. "Hey Marcus, hope you're doing well. I've been hearing a lot about the changes you've made. Impressive stuff. Would love to grab a coffee sometime, talk shop, maybe pick your brain on a few things if you're open to it. Let me know." Mark, you have to understand something. Mark never said a kind word to me while I was there. In fact, he was one of the voices pushing me out. So I sat on the message for a while. Then I replied, "Mark, I appreciate the message. Life has been busy and I've been focused on building things that last. If you'd like to sit in on one of the coding boot camps we're running for high schoolers upstairs, that might be a good place to start. Let me know. Best, Marcus." That was it. No meeting, no coffee, just a gentle nudge to remind him I'm not here to validate your journey. I'm busy mentoring the next generation to outpace you. The annual report. Months passed. I stayed out of daily operations. I focused on expanding my holdings, investing in community initiatives, and mentoring bright talent like Devonte. But every quarter, my property manager delivered financial reports. Rent collected from Braytec lease renewals from floor 2 tenants. Startup growth on top floor. Public perception as a modern community-minded owner, I was profitable, respected, and free. And for the first time in decades, I was at peace. Carla's departure. The cherry on top. Carla quit. I heard it from a friend. After 2 quarters of declining morale, bad press about internal management, and talent walking across the hall to the cooler startup upstairs, Carla was asked to step down to pursue other opportunities. Translation: the board had lost confidence. I didn't celebrate. I didn't send flowers. I just updated the lobby tenant directory, Suite 3B vacant. Inquiries, welcome reflections from the rooftop. In an evening, I stood on the rooftop terrace looking out over the city. Sunset painting the skyline, the hum of activity below, lights flickering on in the startup office behind me. It hit me then what real success feels like. It's not applause, not even revenge. It's quiet control. It's ownership. It's knowing you didn't burn bridges, you bought the land they stood on, rebuilt better ones, and offered others a way across. I never wanted to destroy Braytech. I wanted to remind them that no one is disposable. That wisdom, experience, and loyalty aren't things you cast aside because a spreadsheet says optimize. And I think I succeeded. Final walkthrough. Before I left that night, I walked the building one more time, through the startup's creative suite buzzing with energy, through the nonprofit's lab filled with laughter and keyboards clicking, past the darkened Braytech floor, mostly empty, a few lights still on, people working late, and I felt no anger, just clarity. They fired me for being too old, but I didn't just survive it. I turned it into the most powerful move of my life. Because at the end of the day, you don't need to fight to prove your worth. You just need to own the place. They used to laugh behind my back. I know because I caught it once. It was a Friday afternoon years ago. I was walking past the break room to grab some paperwork when I heard one of the younger executives, Kyle, I think, joking with his friends. Have you seen Robert's notebook? The guy still writes in cursive like it's 1975. No wonder he's stuck where he is. Dinosaur. Laughter. Quiet, cruel. And yet, I kept walking. No confrontation, no speech. I let them think I didn't hear it because sometimes the best revenge isn't noise. It's patience. Back then, they thought time was on their side. That youth gave them immunity, that if they rid the company of people like me, they could mold it into their own playground. But time is a better teacher than all their degrees combined, and time never lies. I now sit on the 17th floor of the very building they used to make decisions in, but this time the title on the door doesn't say Senior Analyst. It says Robert Kane, Property Owner. They rent from me now. The same company that let me go because I was too old to fit their vision. I never raised my voice, never sued, never went to the press. I took my severance and said, thank you. But I also took my blueprint, the one they thought was obsolete, the one they underestimated because they were too busy chasing trends and viral buzzwords. And then I built. Owning this building wasn't about flexing power. It was about proving something to myself. It was about showing that experience isn't outdated and that wisdom has no expiration date. That while they were trading memes and hosting synergy meetings, I was studying the market. I was watching the neighborhood shift. I saw opportunity where they saw routine. So when the building came up for sale after a downturn, hit the previous landlord hard, I didn't hesitate. I had my LLC, my silent partners, and my capital ready. And I made the purchase. Clean, quiet, strategic, just like everything I'd done since the day they let me go. When word finally reached their ears, it wasn't a press release. It was a lease renewal packet, higher rates, new regulations, updated security protocols. They were confused. They didn't understand why things were changing so abruptly until they read the new ownership signature, Arcane Properties. The day I walked through the main lobby again, I wore the same suit I wore the day they let me go. I didn't need to gloat. My silence said enough. Some of them tried to act friendly again. Robert, wow, long time. Crazy world, right? We should catch up sometime. Others avoided eye contact altogether. And Kyle, the one with the jokes, he now reports directly to my leasing manager, and every month, his department cuts a check addressed to me. Funny how things turn. But here's the truth. I've learned the message I carry from all of this time always reveals character. Not overnight, not in a flash. But eventually who you really are catches up to you. If you chase clout instead of legacy, time will expose it. If you burn bridges instead of building them, time will show you just how cold it is on the other side. If you betray loyalty, discard wisdom, and mock experience, time will bring you face to face with the consequences, just like it did for them. I don't hold hatred in my heart. That would make me like them. But I do hold memory. I remember how they treated me when I was no longer convenient. I remember the smirks, the dismissals, the way they turned my age into a punchline. And I remember how I felt when I walked out that building box in hand with everything I'd worked for left behind. But now I also remember the day I walked back in, not as an employee, but as the owner. Time is a circle, and mine came full. To anyone out there who's been underestimated, written off, or pushed aside, hear me. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't need revenge to find justice. You just need to keep building quietly, patiently, and with purpose. Because time, yes, time is always watching, and it never forgets. This is your message. Let them laugh. Let them mock. Let them think you've faded into irrelevance. Just keep moving. Keep learning. Keep preparing. Because one day they'll see your name on the door they thought would never open to you. And when they do, you won't need to say a word. Time will say it for you.